Hi, and welcome back to my channel for more stream of consciousness nonsense that I try to pass off as motoring content. So this video is a follow-up video really to the one that I uploaded quite a while ago now, where I took the car to Sam Lander, the Porsche specialist in Malton, and he kindly let me put it up on his ramps, and I pointed out all the things that would be wrong with your Autotrader bargain Boxster. But unlike all the videos on YouTube that I've viewed that proclaimed that they had bought the cheapest Boxster in the UK, etc, etc, and then they take it down to a specialist who puts it up on the ramp and then points out all the things that need doing. They take it down off the ramp and, well, you never really get a follow-up. And the reason for that is because it may have been the cheapest Boxster on Autotrader, but it's going to cost at least what they paid for the car, if not more, to actually put it right. Now, you can drive around on 24-year-old 130,000 mile shock absorbers that are not leaking and have passed an MOT, but I guarantee you they're shagged. Compared to new ones, they're going to be bollocksed. If you want to drive around on saggy old shocks, then that's up to you. However, I don't, which is why I replaced them. I've also done all the fluids, obviously, and the coil packs, the air oil separator, and the IMS bearing. It's got an upgraded one, and the clutch, and the rear main seal, and all the brake discs, and all the brake pads, and the brake fluid has been bled through twice actually. First time was because of a dodgy brake line, which was replaced. Also done the steering, power steering fluid, refinished the wheels, stuck on some decent tyres, all for the same, and it's cost me pretty much what I paid for the car in the first place, which is just shy of 5k. Now there'll be lots of people in the comments shouting at me for paying way over the odds for a year 2000 2.7 Boxster. But this car ticked all the boxes that I need to tick when I'm looking at an old car. It needs to have an MOT of a decent length because I want to drive it. It needs to have a rust-free body, and it needs to have a decent engine. Everything else I'm not that bothered about because I'm probably going to replace it anyway. And this car ticked all those boxes, as well as being possibly the most basic Boxster ever to come out of the Porsche factory. So it has no air conditioning, no fancy stereo. I like it. Anyway, once you've repaired it all, fixed everything, the way they drive is absolutely stellar. They get criticised for long gears, but I love it. You can boom round B roads in third gear absolutely beautifully. The grip, the poise, the handling is fantastic. The steering is perfectly weighted. The engine is lovely. If I had a forward case facing camera now, you'd see that I was right up the arse of an Audi A4 who actually thinks he's doing well around these bends. But the way it's bouncing and pitching all over the place, I think I know which is the better handling car. You may have noticed I'm actually wearing driving gloves. And I do that because I find the steering wheel on the Porsche just a little thin for my liking, and I think it gives me a rather caddish look. The flexibility in the gear, I think, is fantastic. This has got the 5-speed box, which I believe has a lot in common with the box fitted to the Volkswagen Passat. When you're buying your bargain box, if you get any service history worth anything, then that is a bonus. I mean, this was sold with lots of photographs of invoices and receipts, and they were saying, the seller was saying that oh, I do enjoy that. The seller was saying that it had been serviced at a well-regarded Northeast Porsche specialist. And you get the photographs, of course, in the Autotrader advert. And then when you get to actually examine the paperwork up close, when you go and see it, you see that the newest of these invoices is for 2017, when it had a service. And yes, earlier that year it had a water pump, which is apparently quite common on these, and it was the oil filler tube had split, and that had been replaced. And it was quite obvious that no expense spared was not quite true, and the actual truth was expense was spared. So the thing is, these cars suffer from deferred maintenance because official Porsche garages are expensive, even for old snotters like this. Independent Porsche specialists are quite expensive, even for old snotters like this, and your local village garage generally don't want to go near them. So, of course, nobody bothers maintaining them. And what you have to remember is, as well, that these are bought when they're old. People buy them for driving around with the top down. They've probably never driven a Boxster before, so they don't know how good they are when everything is working properly. So they drive it and they're amazed by how sprightly it is, how well it corners, even on all its worn out suspension. However, I think these cars are generally very, very well engineered and very, very robust, and they can be brought back. So an oil change, filter change, gearbox oil change, all the fluids, set of plugs, coil packs. The difference between how this drove when I first had it, and I thought it was pretty good then, and how it drives now, absolutely, completely and utterly different. The engine feels better, the brakes were always very good on this actually, which is one of the reasons I haven't sent the calipers off to be refurbished. The other reason being that it's an awful lot of money. The brakes are fantastic, and the bleed through made them even better. So that's why they've stayed on. I've given them a quick lick of paint with a brush, which looks good from far, but don't look at them too closely. Anything else that you need to know? They can be quite economical. We took this down to the Cotswolds not long after we first had it, and it was a motorway journey down, obviously, and then, of course, whiz around the Cotswolds, around all their lanes, and this is a shit traffic lights. A whiz around the Cotswolds and then motorway back. So I brimmed it before we left and brimmed it when we got back. We covered a total of 345 miles, I think, and the average fuel consumption was 34 to the gallon. Now, I was quite impressed. I really was, because on the motorway, obviously, I was keeping to the limits. But around the Cotswold Lane, there was quite a lot of third gear work and lots of revs. And 34 overall, not bad. Yeah, I love that bit of road. The thing I find when driving this is that it's so well poised that you don't really have to manhandle it at all. Just a light touch on the steering wheel. You're sort of directing it around the corners rather than steering it, as it were. It's almost as if you're saying to it, I suggest we go in this direction. And the car is like, I agree, and I'm way ahead of you. And the feel is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It really is. The two topics with 986 Boxsters that always get the forums buzzing. Those are IMS bearing and exhaust. So I'll quickly address the IMS bearing. And what I'll say is, basically, do what you want. Believe the horror stories of the IMS detonating and wiping out the engine, or do like I did, that while the gearbox was out for the rear main seal and the clutch, just put an upgraded bearing in it, because I just don't ever have to worry about it now, whether the rumours, whether it's true or not about the original bearings. This one's been sorted. When I come to sell this car, at some point, I'm sure I will, I pretty much guarantee the first thing that anybody's going to ask, in the hope of getting money off, is, has the IMS bearing been done? And I will proudly wave an invoice in their face showing that it has. The other one is exhausts. Now, you can probably tell from this car that it is not a standard exhaust. When I bought it, it had Porsche exhaust on it, although it wasn't actually the correct exhaust for the engine. It had the exhaust from a 3.2S on it. And the seams were splitting, it was very, very rusty, and whilst it had obviously passed an MOT at some point, although I really no idea how. Now I had a choice. I could get a used exhaust, which may last a long time, may not, and also was there a used exhaust of decent enough quality available at that moment, because I wanted to put the car back together, buy a new Porsche one at 4 figures, well into 4 figures. Well, that just not happening on a bargain budget Boxster, or a Dansk one, which they're still pretty pricey, and again, bargain budget Boxster. The Toyo Sport stainless steel exhaust was suggested by Sam Lander. He said he'd fitted plenty of them to bargain budget Boxsters, and they seemed to work all right. People thought they were okay. And at, I think I paid 179 quid, delivered next day to Sam's workshop for him to fit, so I could collect the car after he'd done the IMS. That really was the way forward. Now, I know these boxes are called eBay drone boxes because they drone and they don't have that Porsche crackle at low revs. In fact, they're actually quite quiet at low revs, and they do drone a bit. However, you can pretty much kill the droning straight away with some dB killers in the exhaust. Get a pair of those for about 8 quid from eBay, push them in the back, tighten up the Allen key, cruise on the motorway, absolutely no problems at all. There you go, flexible third gear overtake. I've got a couple of dB killers in the boot, so if I was ever going to go on a bit of a motorway journey, I could just pop them in. What I will say though is that without the dB killers in, the Toyo exhaust, I think, breathes better at the top end of the rev range. So we're talking 5 to the red line, 5,000 RPM to the red line. I think the Toyo breathes better than the Porsche exhausts. Oh, you would not believe it. Are you fucking blind? At the top end of the rev range, I think the Toyo breathes better, which I suppose is understandable because it's just a pipe with a bit of an expansion box filled with, I'm assuming, some kind of wadding, which over time flattens down, which incidentally cuts down on the drone over age. Anyway, I think that's probably it for my ramblings about this car. And if you enjoy that sort of thing, then please give it a thumbs up, and even though I end up sounding like every other YouTuber, consider subscribing. So, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time for more nonsense.